You should not return to the building for any reason until you have been advised that it's safe to do so. Can I remind everybody to please put their mobile phones on silent mode and keep their phones away from the microphone where it's going to minimize interference. The meeting will be recorded and live webcast, and therefore when speaking, please remember to speak clearly into the microphone. As the chair of the meeting, I have the discretion to terminate or suspend recordings or webcasts if, in my opinion, would prejudice the proceedings of the meeting. Recording and webcasting of the confidential items will not take place. Come back to it. To alert me as chair of the meeting that you would like to speak, please raise your hands. I will call upon the committee members first and then move to non-committee members. For those joining via Zoom, please click on the raise hand. I will then advise you when to click unmute to speak. Please can I remind you to click mute only once you have finished speaking and avoid unnecessary background noises. Please remember, if you leave the meeting room for any reason, you will not be able to take part in the vote of the item being discussed at that time. Please can I request that when you speak, you make your points as distinctly as possible to allow for a smooth running of the meeting. Please can I take this opportunity to remind you to be polite and treat each other with respect at all times. Right. First of all is apologies. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Stengel.
Thank you. Any others? I'm going to leave it at the moment that he may arrive late because of working commitments. Right. Declare a declaration of interest. No. Okay. The minutes of the last meeting now. I wasn't there, so I take it I need, have you all read them? Can I have a proposal?
I'm happy to propose them.
Thank you. And can we have a seconder? Second. Thank you. And we all agree that I'm correct? Could you mention I didn't vote, wasn't there. So I can't vote.
Not true, technically. Actually, you can vote if you weren't there to ratify the minutes of the previous. I can dig out a note on that previously.
First item for tonight's agenda is the civil handbook. Have we all read it?
Yes.
Oh,
Can I just say I was surprised to see it at this meeting because I would have thought it would have gone to communities. I don't know. I mean, and we don't have many communities meetings.
well, this is really should be going into the policies
Okay.
of the council. So,
Okay.
is there any? Sorry,
Yes.
Frederica, I'm not going to
You want me to give her?
You first on.
Okay.
So for me, I think it's good that we have a guidebook that is used to give a mayor of Taunton guidance on like expectations, especially for those that may want to consider the role. For me, I think that there is a wider point in relation to what it is that we perceive the mayor to be. On reading this, it feels very traditional in its approach, and is that what we want as the Taunton Town Council? Is it that we want all the pomp and circumstance that some members of our public may engage with, or is it that actually we want to be modern and open and forward thinking in our approach with regards to the mayoralty and what that looks like? So I personally struggled in relation to giving the mayor a dress code, because I think why should we deem what it is that is suitable for someone to wear or not wear? It should be, I think the term that's now used in business, or that we certainly use, and I know that my friends' businesses use, dress for your day, so that you therefore dress for what it is that you are facing. So you, I don't know, you wouldn't turn up to certain circumstances wearing certain clothes. It's about looking at what it is and you going with what's right for you to wear. Amber and I dress very differently, Vanessa and I dress very differently. We shouldn't be prescribed to in what it is that we do or don't wear. That should be our own personal choice. So I do think that for me personally, we need to have a guide that looks around things such as how to chair meetings and that the time constraints and all of that but I think it needs to be a little bit more strategic. And I think there's a wider point for us as the council, but I really don't feel comfortable with the dress code. And also in relation to, there's another point. I think we don't mention what training they will receive, but unless I missed it. And I think actually one of the key points of the mayor, as much as being the public face of us, is around chairing full council meetings. And that is a particular skill set to be a chair, to be able to not only keep up with the meeting, but also to understand our rules and regulations. So I think we need to probably mention that a bit more. That's my 2 pence to start with.
Can I just say that, you know, everywhere else I've gone in Somerset, they have this same dress code. You know, so if you turn up, you know, when I've turned up to a few things, not very many, but I've turned up to a few things, and yes, there is this definite dress code throughout the whole of Somerset, you know, and if Taunton is going to look a bit different, it's going to be a bit strange. Secondly, having done the role of deputy mayor, it's actually been a very interesting experience for me because, you know, once people come to recognise you, they come up to you and they talk to you and they tell you, you know, what they think, what they like, you know. It's a way of recognising the person, you know, and that's my experience of actually being the deputy mayor has been great, and I would recommend it to everybody because it's been lovely. And I have had none of the responsibility, but I take the point about training as a chair, you know, because I admire your skills, Ray, and I was surprised that we turned up to that meeting online. Amber was online as well, and it was interesting, but I thought, well, you know, you're actually quite skillful as a chair, so I'm, you know, but we've all got something to learn, yeah. Take that point.
I'm actually on the same boat as,
I'm happy to come in after.
I'm in the same boat as Federico, and I have reservations about some of the content in there. It does read as slightly archaic, and we have to stop and think, what value does that add? Just because something has always been done a certain way doesn't mean to say it always should. Just because everyone else has a certain standard doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't actually be progressive and move things forward, and other people might actually appreciate us shaking things up a little bit. We can be leaders, not followers. A lot of the things in there were set in the Victorian era or in the pre-war era, just because that's how they were done at that particular time. There's notes in there to say that they say the position of clerk goes back to essentially biblical times. There's obviously been modernisations to these roles over the millennia, over the centuries. We seem to get stuck around Victoriana pre-war era in terms of dress code, in terms of protocol, and don't always move things forwards. But there is no particular reason why we should or should not. So I'm interested to know how much of the content of this is because we're legally required to do it, and how much is because it's customary. Because if it's customary, it's open to change, and it depends how much of the pomp and circumstance, the dress code, the things like bringing the mace into meetings and presenting it to the mayor, is that required? Because the way that it's written reads as if it is an actual requirement. If it's not actually required, could we save 5 minutes of the meeting, possibly some security costs, by not bringing the ceremonial mace into a meeting? If it's not adding value to what we do, if it's not adding value, then I think everything should be on the table to amend.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors, for your comments. Obviously, the document itself was prepared by Joe Kemmer, who can't be here tonight, but obviously we'll take on board that feedback. I don't know how much of that is actually legally required. And I know Joe has a Bible, like a guide, civic and ceremonial. So we can get that as a written answer for you in that regard. I think what I would say is obviously this is a document that we've had that's travelled with the mayoralty into the town council, but it's open to interpretation and sort of a living document type of thing. I do wonder, as Councillor Garside alluded to, whether there's a role for the civic working group that was set up in sort of reviewing this document and sense checking it going forward, perhaps. But just to get something on the books, so to speak, that's why it's brought forward.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to add to that, because I'd like to understand around the legislative, because you don't see Sadiq Khan or Andy Burnham or other certain mayors wearing full-blown regalia. I don't think. I think that they are very modern in their approach, and whether that's because they are elected mayors, it is different. And whether they do it at like one annual meeting of the London Assembly, but it would just be interesting to find out that, I guess, what is it that we minimally have to do, because I don't, like Amber has said, I'm not sure. Some of it adds value, and it's all about making sure that we do keep hold of some of our traditions, but doing tradition's sake doesn't necessarily make it the right thing to do.
Yes.
Just in regards to legislative, there's not a great deal in there. It's just about obviously what the council prefers to do. So there is some scope to change it. And as Marcus said, it's something that's travelled a long time.
Because I don't even think, just to come back on that, Donna and Marcus, that we never saw that at SWT in relation to councillors having input into it, did we? And so if it travelled with it, it would be good for now, maybe that being that breath of fresh air to look to change it, because telling women that they need to wear a knee-length skirt or something and a hat in my world, good luck telling me that. Yeah.
Insist on it.
I
Anybody else?
just,
Yes,
yeah, it's like going back to some of the ceremonial stuff. I mean, our main council meetings are quite long and we have huge agendas to get through. You know, we spend sort of good 5-10 minutes standing up and sitting down and bowing to a mace, and also paying for the sergeant at mace to be there to look after the mace. Is that a sensible use of both our time and council money necessarily? Let's maybe save it for holidays and holidays and the annual meeting.
anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I guess you have, as a council, would have to weigh up how we want to appear, really. Ultimately, there really is no, I'd say there's no benefit to having it. Because there is in certain parts, it's, the mayor is basically the council's marketing tool. That's effectively all it is. And whether we want to be harping back and acknowledging tradition and paying for that, or as has already been mentioned, do we want to revitalise it and package it up in something a different way, fit for a modern future? But as has already been mentioned, you know, annual general meetings, okay, I could that having that historical element to it. But does it serve any purpose other than to prolong a meeting at full council meeting? Not really. So I do think there needs to be some sort of work done on it to see what we need to do.
Yeah, just on another matter, really just an area of interest for me, and just to clarify, is the mayor when he or she is on an engagement and acting on behalf of the council, and when they are not, are they free to attend political rallies, for example? I don't think it acts. So if I was going to be mayor, I'd read this and I'd need clarification on what I could and couldn't do, if that makes sense.
Okay.
You can't, I think it says on the document,
I don't mind saying that.
you can't attend political stuff as.
Yeah.
as
No,
as
you
mayor.
can't be.
No.
The mayor is neutral. As we say.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is it probably wouldn't be a great look for Taunton if I was mayor and then seen on TV at something overtly political. That's what I'm trying to get at. So
If you're wearing a chain,
no, yeah, not wearing a chain. Somebody might go, that's the mayor of Taunton.
but you're allowed to do that, just like, you know, Andy Burnham or Sadiq Khan are both Labour and are able to attend stuff for Labour rallies. But they couldn't rock up if London did have, maybe
So,
does or doesn't,
yeah.
yeah.
Fine,
I mean, but my understanding of their role is their role is very different because they're elected mayors. And they understand, my understanding of this role, and this, I've read this book several times, the guideline several times, is that the mayor is supposed to be apolitical and not representing the council, but perhaps actually representing the town, the townspeople. So it's a different role, and as Councillor Pasquini said, it's a marketing role, it's a marketing tool. You know, it makes life more interesting. You've got somebody who's dressed in a ridiculous costume and they're standing there, you know, waving and, you know, and they think, oh, well, what's that about? You know, oh, that's interesting. That's all it is really. But, I mean, it's not all that it is, but it does enable people to recognise you and engage with you, and they do. They come up to you, all kinds of people. I mean, I'm sure Nick will, well, I'm sure he's experienced it much more than I have, but that's my experience.
Is this something in terms of just customer engagement that we could actually do a consultation on to see, we're making decisions on the people of, you know, what the people of Taunton want. There's stuff in the document that says what the people of Taunton expect. Is this actually a good opportunity to ask them what they actually think? If, you know, the people of Taunton, a majority overwhelmingly say yes, we want to see the mayor in robes at all times, that would be interesting. But if they say no, we really don't care, then, you know, then we can just, you know, we could say we are bowing to the will of the people.
Now I've got my say. One.
It's an interesting
You've got
piece of
to remember
consultation
the-
work to do.
You've got to remember the mayor is the first citizen of Taunton, and it's the way of projecting him as the first citizen of Taunton.
But my expectations of the first citizen Taunton isn't someone wearing a Beatles outfit with a tricorn hat. It's not the costume, it's the actions and the speech and the deeds and the turning up to events and networking and all the other stuff that happens, not the ceremonial side of it. That would be my expectation. And maybe things have changed and maybe there's a segment of society that expect that. But you know, we're in the 21st century, there might be significant numbers of people who think that's quite a waste of taxpayers' money, and we probably need to be quite mindful of that.
We're not really wasting a lot of taxpayers' money. It brings the mayor's position, as far as I'm concerned, it brings things into the town. If people look for the mayor, if you go to church, the mayor's there. It should be recognised.
Absolutely, I'm not saying the mayor shouldn't be attending events and doing all sorts of stuff, but maybe some with less of the ceremonial aspect.
Shall we go back to what we should have been debating is the book?
But then maybe that's the bit that I guess where we need to maybe send it to that other committee for them to review and come forward, because I don't think that this is, in my view, a fit for purpose for a modern council with some of these things, especially around dress code.
I hate to think, could we come back to the civic book, because it's to me it's a history book. I read it right through.
It's a working handbook. This is an instruction manual for a mayor.
Yeah.
So if we need to recommend this as an instructional manual for a mayor, it needs to be fit for purpose.
I think what Councillor Federica Smith Roberts is saying is, can we put it to the civic working group to
It
review
makes sense.
that,
Yeah,
to then come
it
back
does
again?
make sense.
Yeah.
I honestly think it's also too long.
Yes,
It's way too long.
yeah, I agree with you.
You know, it's very interesting to know that someone hadn't take, I was going to say, steal 2 maces. But we don't need to know that. It's right to be put into a history book. So do we all agree that it should go to the civic committee and let them deal with it?
Do you want to second your proposal, Federica?
Federica is proposing and the second, everybody agreed with that?
Can I just check, so you're going to take it to the civic working group and then you're going to take it back to here, or are you going to take your recommendations to full council, for the whole council to decide on the recommendations from the working group?
It should come back to us.
Come back here, but
Should.
Come back here,
yeah.
okay.
Right.
Well, can I ask, sorry, just when does that civic group meet, just so that we can work on time scales?
Not that often, is it? That's every 6 months.
On a need to know basis.
Is it when
It's on ad hoc.
ad hoc when we want it to
Yeah,
be?
so it's. Right, then number 5 is the Operation London Bridge policy. Have we all read that on this one? I am. Yes, everybody doesn't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's if there's a death of the monarch or the royal family, any member of the royal family, that this should be what we do. Tradition. Yeah, yes, Rebecca.
I guess being part of this in the district council when this was instigated when sadly the Queen passed away. So I think for me, this is just standard protocol. You can't really mess with it in the fact that you follow the advice of what comes out of Buckingham Palace. I did just wonder, there was Operation Fourth Bridge, which was for if the death of the Queen's consort, so when Prince Philip passed away. So I didn't know whether that still applies or because this London Bridge is now meant.
It does list.
Because it does mention the part,
The
doesn't
Queen,
it?
the Queen and the various members of the family and more local politicians as
Yeah.
well.
I just wanted to double check though, because it might be that Private House of Buckingham Palace updated it following the death of the monarch and then Prince Philip, just as to whether there was any other policies in place, because we used to have to run 2 policies, just in case. But I'm really supportive of this. You know, it is, you just have to follow the advice that's given.
Do you have any comment on what the mayor should be wearing? Because it's reflected in the dress code here. So if you agree with this, then you're saying the mayor could be in jeans and a t-shirt.
Dress for the day.
Just to be clear.
Yes, it's come.
So I get that, for me personally, in situations like this, I get why we have the traditional dress.
Yes, Marcus.
Yeah. If it's okay, thank you, Chair. Just to give a brief overview. So obviously, I think Jo was quite closely involved with this when she was at Somerset West Taunton. She sort of adapted the documentation for the town council. Obviously, Taunton is the site of the proclamation for the county as the county town, so it's got quite an important role when that call does come in. And as it says in Appendix B, it's got the list of working members of the royal family that are involved in there. So Her Majesty the Queen would be one of those ones that activates the protocol if she was to pass away.
They must have just updated now to 1 rather than running 2, which they used to run.
Right, I read it and I was a bit concerned that they actually, in policy, actually meant the king by name. I don't think that is correct. I honestly don't think that is, it should be. We are implying that the king is either dead or he's going to die. I think that is very
Is it there as an example?
Yeah.
Is it?
well in it.
Or is it?
It actually says that the death of King Charles III. I don't think that should be in it. It should be the monarch or members of the royal family. And this is a
You mean
live document.
Appendix D?
Yeah. I think it's wrong. I'm sorry. This is a live. It's a live document. It's a policy. It's what's going to happen in the future. And yet we are actually mentioning the king by name. I think I feel that should be taken out. I don't know what anybody else thinks about it. You know, I think
Well, as a policy, it doesn't need to be.
it shouldn't be in it, and I don't think it should be in it. Is that possible? We
can make that.
We can take it out completely. Has anybody else, anything else about policy? No? No, I propose that someone would propose that we accept it with, let's start. Can I get someone to accept it with the changes?
My only question is, again, and actually you raised a good point, Ray, and sorry to come in on that. On Appendix I, we put in the contacts at each place and their email addresses. So is this a living, breathing document that may adjust when those, if
It's
those,
quite normal.
okay, fine.
It's quite normal to put live contact details.
So it's everything's in one place, so yeah, the event you can upload it.
But can I have a proposal with the alterations and with the removal of the king's name from it?
Okay.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And second, please. Thank you. Do we all agree to that? Yes? Yes, agree to. ask the same question again. Number 6, the health and safety policy. Now, who read this honestly?
Long document.
Every word of it.
Yes, but I did notice that it's actually the health and safety of everyone is actually the responsibility of this committee. So, you know, it does seem like we have to have an update almost every time we meet on, you know, the situation, you know, because it's the responsibility of this committee, and that's what I noticed in the policy. And I don't know, yeah. Okay.
So on that, do we need to have it as a standing agenda item on this, just to talk about any health and safety issues? Or was that being misinterpreted? Does that make sense? So if we are responsible as the committee, then should we not just have a discussion either in public or private session around any health and safety issues that are flagged? My question was bearing in mind we've got the insurance discussion later on, does all of this sit in line with the insurances that we're going to buy, that it fits within our requirements when purchasing insurance?
Right. Well, I made a list, I went through it. I was health and safety officer for the public health service before I came down to Somerset. And I'm concerned one or two things. The HSE has a habit of every month or so changing their policies. Now, we should fall in line. This is not from the NSS, this is from private company. Because you've got the policy and you also got the booklets. There's two different items, isn't there? But the booklet, I agree, it could be as strong as you like for members of staff or any other person to read, but the policy itself should be straightforward. It shouldn't need to be something you need every member to read. It should be very clear of what they're saying. You know, there was a number of things in it. There was nothing about training in it. That should be the training. There should be a training list of what staff are expected to whatever. I questioned whether there's nothing mentioned about firewall. It said we should have firewalls. Have we got firewalls? Is that part of that? We've actually got firewalls. Right. There's nothing about office fire drill, I noticed, in it. That should be in it. It says there's fire drill, but there should be an actual drill, and it should be done. PHS used to do it every 3 months.
There is a fire drill that's done in
It's
the
for the whole
building,
building.
the whole building.
Who deals with that?
It's done by the facilities team.
What would happen if we ended up? Oh, I'm with you. No, sorry, maybe I understand that. Yeah. With the, I couldn't quite understand with the staff with asking if they've got MOT and that for their cars. Now, I partly understand that yes, you want their vehicle to be safe, but anybody that's driving should have an MOT and insurance on their vehicles, anyway. If so, private vehicles.
This is for the usage of the pool cars and the.
No, not all cars. It read to me that it was if they're using their own cars for private, business use.
So I think that's in relation to paid travel in particular. So if I was to go on a course, I would be required to have business insurance and a legal and roadworthy car. And if the council is going to pay for expenses for those circumstances, we have a responsibility to ensure that that car is legal and roadworthy and that we have driving licence.
And you have a driving licence to drive the car in the first place.
There's only one little slight difference. It says with you're talking about stuff, but every councillor that drives, it then affects them as well. You can ask, have I got MOT on my car? Have I got insurance?
That's not if you're driving to a meeting, that would only be driving if you were driving,
Here,
no.
No, yeah, so you would only usually claim expenses outside of where you ordinarily would work. So it would be a training course.
Okay.
Yeah.
right, sorry, I was put this down, I thought, well, yes. There's nothing in the policy which says that or in the rest of it, which actually says that the drivers should check their vehicle and there should be a record of the check. Now, the same thing I'm going to bring back is with the PHLS. If there's anybody using a PHLS vehicle had to check, not that you take for granted that there's got petrol in it, oil in it, water. They had to check and they had to tick it and sign that when they took the vehicle out, it was in full use.
Yeah, we have got vehicle checks in place and the town warden is responsible and they've got a process in place that the vehicles are up to scratch and maintained.
Or do they sign something to say that
When you-
daily is checked?
Yeah, when you get in the vehicle, you have to sign to say that what the mileage is and what you checked. So we've got that in place in the cars.
But it does say in here about employers must carry out prescribed checks in the town council vehicles prior to use in conjunction with a laid down checking procedure, which we've got in place.
Okay. And what else was there? The other thing, which, as I say, maybe a different organisation, but it could be same throughout whatever the organisation is, that first aid kits would have to be checked once a month to make sure that every item needed in the first aid kit was there. And that it was checked by a person who was able to do it properly.
We have got first aid kit.
Yeah, you have a first aid kit, but is it checked? Because if someone does something and needs something out of it and takes it, how's that item replaced? Is someone, do they have to mention someone to have replaced, or is anybody actually checking? I did read this one, I know that was. Okay, I've said enough, I think. Is anybody else going to do this? Yeah, yes, I will, yeah.
So I guess it's a, Donna and Marcus is about the fact that if this committee is responsible for health and safety, if I've understood it correctly, because it lists out, how is it that we make those responsibilities a kind of democratic process or reporting mechanism as to how do we keep track? Because there's elements in this report saying that we have to make sure all staff have received policy documentation, I think on one of the pages. And so how is it that we know that that has happened, if that's our responsibility?
Okay, we can look on that. So health and safety as in officer wise, that falls under Marcus's remit. So maybe we can look at a process. Be able to keep track of all that. And like you say, it could be a standard item that whether it be every quarter, 6 months, it's on the agenda for reviewing and updating.
It says that it's also about us saying any issues raised by employees are discussed and considered for action. So I guess that would fall in if we could have that as a standing item.
So, sorry, Paul.
Yeah, I think my point is what Councillor Smith-Roberts just said. This is a very big and lengthy document. I think if we're responsible for this, there's a lot of statements in there that say we are doing this and we are doing that. And I'm kind of fearful that just check that we are in fact doing that so somebody can quote the report back to us if we haven't in fact done it. It's almost like cases where people say you have to have this report, you have to have this health and safety guide, but you just produce the guide on a template and you just got to make sure that you're actually doing it, if that makes sense. I've no reason to think we're not, but just if we're responsible, I'd like to be able to sort of check that out now and again, like Peg suggested. That's the spirit of it.
That's basically where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Because I work for the government, and the National Audit Office used to check, and they went through everything, literally line to make sure that we were doing what the policies that we had to be spoken to.
Yeah, so as part of the service that Work Best offer, we have a dedicated health and safety advisor. They come in and do an audit, I think every 6 months, maybe, or at least a full one every year. We had ours early in January, didn't we? So that is something that they need to be keeping on our toes.
But that's when they do it, we should come back to this committee to say it's fine.
Yeah, I can bring the report that they do in January. I think we can bring that through to you.
I just think we probably need to future-proof ourselves, because if we're growing our workforce, that workforce in particular is going to be outside working, like the town wardens. We're probably not saying that office staff aren't at risk of injury or accidents, but it's more than likely that outside it may be more probable. It is, I guess, us about making sure that they're protected and that we know that we've got all the mitigations or at least risk assessed it in place.
That was one of the things that they did review when they came and done the initial assessment.
But this, to me, this is one of the most important documents we've got. Really is big. If we do something wrong, saying that document we're doing it this way, and someone gets seriously injured, the council itself will be liable. So I really think it's an important document. Bit too long. There's a lot in it, you know. There's something about rubella and mumps in it, if I remember rightly. That would be nothing to us. That would be to the health authority. They will, or they can tell us, but we can do actually nothing about it. Haven't got the authority.
Was that point not about just making sure that you report that to your colleagues if you suffer from any of those particular ailments because they're contagious? So you need to make sure that it was specifically naming those things are things you need to report to.
But there's
Sorry.
there's every possible thing in there. Everything's in there, including how to lift the box right the way through. It's yes, it's a good document, and yes, I agree with all of it. But one of the things people would come back with: have you been trained? Do you know how to lift the box? It's that
Staff do the ICASCO manual handling training as part of their induction on top.
I'm not attacking you, but it's something I believe personally. You know, it is important. It is important. Right. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to say about it? No? Right. With this, the handbook is one item and the policy that should be held as a different item. It can't be added together, that we can't agree both of them together. They should be treated independent of each other. Because policy is the council's document, where the handbook is the public document. Am I not right?
The handbook should be just with the policy.
Yeah.
So you need to have the policy, and then once you've done the policy, the handbook should follow.
Yes, but you can agree them both at the same time.
Yeah.
You can agree them in block.
Yeah.
That's what you think.
I did, can I make a recommendation that we have it though on the next agenda to talk about it as a standing agenda item? That's okay.
Yeah, I've got on here to set up a procedure, how we can keep up to date and ensure that Finance and Governance Committee are being compliant, and also a procedure in place for reports to come to this committee. And so we've got everything documented.
Okay, can I propose that we accept it?
I'm happy to propose to accept those.
Yes, seconded. Are we all in favour? Everybody in favour? Yes, that's right. Fantastic. I'll ask the same again. Have you read it?
I've got some questions.
Okay, perfect.
So, are our wardens going to be trained to do pat testing, or do we use an external company? Is what I'm trying to gather here is how much do we actually need to have pat tested, and have we done a review of the buildings or assets that we've got outside of our office to see what needs doing? So if we were to take, I don't know, hand dryers, do they need doing as an example because they're plugged in? So are we going to, what is the cost this needs to happen. There's a lot of information here. I've learned a lot of information probably about my own electricals at home that I probably need to check. But at the same time, it's around understanding who is going to do this work for us and ensure that we keep I know we've got the records in here, but making sure that we've probably done an audit. Because if I was to take, let's choose Victoria Pavilions as an example. It's a very interesting building. Probably needs a little bit of an audit to see what actually is in there. Have we got rules then when we hire it out? Like, I know we've got the leasehold as tenant, but making sure that actually that's being followed. Just so that we're mitigating risk.
Anybody else want to ask anything? Put my 2 penny worth in. Well, as far as I'm concerned, the person that does the pack testing should be registered. Now I know that because the village hall has that problem. So we have to have a registered person that does it. Not any electrician can do it. It's not the way it should be done. They've got to be registered. They've got to be registered.
It was never envisioned that it would be the town warden responsibility, it would be outsourced. When we looked at the office downstairs, what we needed to get pack tested, because it was all new equipment, there was nothing that was needed to be done at the time. It was something that we did investigate, but yeah, it's not something that for the town warden, because it would be a outside contractor.
And have we done any pack testing since taking on assets from Sunset Westland, Taunton? Do we need to therefore get the ball rolling on places like Victoria Pavilion and others to ensure that we're up to?
All of the compliance was being undertaken as part of the service agreement with Somerset West, the Somerset Council. So we will get the reports back from them to find out what they have and haven't done.
If there's something wrong, they should have told us that.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, they do
They
that.
do that.
Yeah.
We've got the CR report. Can I just?
Yes, good.
So, in my previous council, we had a theatre and we did train up our deputy theatre manager man to be a pack tester. It's 40 hours worth of training, and it saved, because there was a significant amount of things to test, saved an awful lot of money. And he was able to then do that pack testing on a regular basis. So it could be something that we can.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Within the staff structure, there's the facilities person, so it could be something that we could look.
We have the electrician on staff. They can with the wardens. Because they need to be electricians, don't they? The pack tester. He doesn't need to.
Actually, competent.
Yeah. Or someone that puts a screwdriver into a plug or something. Okay. Is there any more questions on that? No. Are we happy with that policy as it stands? Can I have a proposal for it, please? Okay, Amber, I'll second it. This was mine.
Are you going to vote?
Yeah, oh, sorry, can we have a vote? Thank you. The next one, number 8, is the friends of group policy. I'm not 100% sure I understood it because one of you probably give just a slide explain it.
Yeah.
I got a bit, did read it, and you lost me, to be honest.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, I think it was recognised that there needs to be a policy in place, obviously, when we inherited the parks and open spaces. Not all of them have friends of groups, but it was recognised that the council supports them and they play a vital role in making our parks and open spaces really valued places. So the policy will enable the friends of groups to continue working in collaboration with the town council and sets out an agreement and encompasses what the responsibilities are on both sides. So that both sides are clear on each other's responsibilities.
It's just that, you know, I mean, isn't this covered anyway by the volunteers policy?
No,
No,
they're not
volunteers.
They're not, no.
Okay, so
That's what, if there's going to be applied retrospectively to the existing friends groups, they will be required to sign up to this, or is this, are the sort of the agreement forms in there only for formation of the new groups?
It was for new groups because there was a new group that wanted to be started, so that's the reason for having it. But what we could do is review all of the groups that we've got in place and look to roll that in.
Yeah, I don't think it would be prohibited, but it just seems fair that if there is an agreement to be made about the expectations between both parties, that we actually go back to the existing groups, and it might actually help shape up some of the group's policy.
Amber alluded to what I was going to say. So I welcome this because I do think that we need to, not just for new groups, but existing groups, kind of carve out who's doing what. And I spoke about this for some time in the previous council about bringing something like this forward. So everyone kind of understood what the expectation was and who was going to do what. Because I think there's a part where it's about valuing what people bring to the table, but also understanding, particularly around health and safety, around those roles and responsibilities. So it's all well and good saying that a friends group may want to fix the bench, but if they put a screw through, as I think we alluded to in a previous conversation, all the way through, and that causes hurt someone, well, actually, is it about making sure that what's done is competent, which is what our town wardens are really there to do? I think that we should look to retrospectively apply this to other friends groups so that we have an even playing field, but actually that we have negotiations with them as to where they feel that this fits so that we can then talk through what it is that they want to do. I like the idea that they all have their own public liability insurance. My concern around that though, and around retrospectively applying it, and also to new groups, is what support they are going to be given to get them up to a competent point. So say someone came forward to do a Hamilton Park group, and let's say I volunteered. Oh, this would be quite a lot to get through to get a group going. So who is going to help kind of with that? So that we can kind of set some kind of support mechanisms, and also for existing groups, they may need a bit of a hand. So I just think it's something for us to consider, because we do need the voluntary sector to help us. Anything where people want to give their time, but it does need to be in a somewhat, regulated is probably the wrong word, but guided way.
If I could just go back on, so under one of the new job roles, it was for the looking after the friends group and providing some support for them. So that was something to be put in place by one of the officers.
Questions? Have we an actual list of the groups so we know who's on, and the list of the people that are actually on the groups? Otherwise, we could end up with someone doing something so they belong to a group. They're not, and we could become liable.
You've actually touched on my next question, sorry, ready to come back in. We've got a policy, but friends group policy, and that's really good about how we interact when we're bringing people together. There's a note in here about terminating the friends group. Well, where does that decision sit? Is it sitting with the clerk to determine that actually that's not how it's not going to work? Does it come to us to make an agreement? How does that work?
Do we actually have the ability to do that? I'm thinking of, I was chair of Friends of Frenchwood for a very long time. We had our own bank account. That was our bank account, and it's and then the current group have their own bank account. Do we have the authority to tell them they are no longer able to have a friends of group if they have their own constitution and their own bank account? Is it more of a partnership, or are they, do we actually have jurisdiction?
Or they can still exist, but they're just not allowed to do stuff in them.
Or is it, again, yeah, so would it be more of a case if we would withdraw our support, so they could no longer give them funding or support or guidance or anything? But do we have the capacity to ban them from existing if they are a publicly formed community group?
Or they can exist, but we just don't want them touching our assets, isn't it?
It's giving them permission, isn't it? 'Cause
Yeah.
that's what it is. We're giving them permission to do it within
Yeah.
our area.
And I'm not saying it would ever happen, but I think we do sometimes have to think, Or if it does happen, how do we disentangle ourselves?
What committee it would go back to?
Yeah.
Community services.
Yes.
Because the other thing, I think if you had to terminate one Friends of Victoria Park, the next group, if somebody else came along, they would be the new Friends of Victoria Park.
Yeah,
How do you unravel that?
I think it, yeah, and maybe it should be reworded as more of withdrawing this support agreement and working out what,
Yeah, we no longer would be.
what we would be providing as a town council, and what they are able to do with our assets. Yeah, they can still be they can still be an active group and do things, but we may not necessarily allow them to hold events.
Yeah.
In our park, for example, or have access to assets.
Okay,
But one of the things that could happen, they could cross against our own wardens. The wardens do a job and they decide that the job is not what they want. They start doing something else different, and that will cause conflict.
In my experience, the friends groups don't tend to do so much hands-on. No, obviously there was a case with the bench being fixed badly, I think.
But that's an example, not real life,
Yeah,
but it's,
yeah, that tends to be less what happens, but they are very valuable as a focus group, as representatives, to be able for us to be able to consult on what the local community would like us to provide.
In Victoria Park, they're hands on.
They're an action group, not a friends of group.
Oh, yeah.
They don't BPAG. They specifically opted to be an action group, not a friends of group.
So what's
Which would,
what's the difference?
because they didn't want to be a friends of group, they wanted to be an action.
But what?
You might have to go back and ask them.
Okay.
But they specifically didn't want to be known as a friends of group.
And if that's the case, then we need to probably roll an action group into the Friends of policy.
Well, this was going back about 15 years, and the current people may be happy to change the name, or that it doesn't, the word friends of doesn't have to be involved, if it's in the same spirit.
If they're a hands-on group, then we could be liable if they make a mistake.
Yeah.
Because if they repair something and they don't do it right, member of the public gets hurt, we are the responsible body.
They have public liability.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, yes.
I think the council are only liable if you ask them to do something. But if the thing that you've asked them to do is negligent, be done, the council will be liable. But if you haven't asked them to do it,
Can I propose that we look at this as both Friends of groups and action groups related to our public open spaces? Does that become wider? Or is that then too
I think
bully?
they're the only action group.
Okay, so that we make sure that it encompasses those who are supporting our open spaces. And I guess there was an element, I've got my train of thought now. Gone, it'll come back to me in a second, but it was around, yeah.
Retrospectively apply, or going out to the existing groups to ensure they sign up to this, essentially a code of conduct.
They should be.
And I think we need to see their public liability insurance yearly, if we don't see it already, so that we can make sure that we have
They are covered.
Got that.
Because at the end of the day, if they haven't got liability assurance and someone does get seriously hurt, they will try and sue the council. They will say that the council is responsible.
And actually that you just brought back the other point to me. I think we need to make sure that their work falls in line with our corporate plan. So let's say that we have got, as a council, we want to rewild our open spaces because that sits in line with our climate change policy. We wouldn't then expect the friends groups to mow them. So I know that's a very simple thing. It's unlikely to happen, but it's just about making sure that actually our aims for our open spaces, which is what is being voted through democratically, then don't get changed.
There is a point in there about requiring them to invite town council to their AGM, which again, that would be an excellent time for us to catch up on what they're doing, what they're planning to do, and just to keep that regular contact with the group. So it is much more of a partnership, and we can support them, they can support us.
Maybe we have a couple of councillors that is their part of their duty, is to go and be the council's eyes to what's going on. Most places do.
Can I completely retrospectively declare an interest, or that I'm a member of VPAG from Friends?
Right. Okay. This one didn't have, it didn't ask for an approval. Surprised that or was that just missed off the paperwork? Because I didn't see it.
Consider approval of the friends.
Are we talking about not approving it,
Not at all.
not approving it yet until it's,
Defer and
as it's just deferring it, so it's had a bit more work done on it, which I'm very happy to propose.
Second. Thanks, Paul. Oh, we all agreed. Thank you. Cheers, thanks. Right. This is what confused me, the volunteer policy. I thought that I couldn't get why we had two different policies, one volunteers and one for friends, because it's a similar type of thing.
But one's specific and one's wide, isn't it?
Yeah, it's. Must admit, I didn't quite understand.
Things like remembrance and planning, road closures and things like that, or one-off events and things like that.
More for individual people rather than a group of people. And usually where we're asking them to do things for the people else.
We mean stand on a pavilion and watch it. Yes, yes, Kid Levy.
My only question or observation on 4.1 was travel expenses carried out on behalf of the town council will be met. Should there not be some sort of additional line upon agreement prior to said task being completed? Otherwise, it just opens up the council to that's some work for you, I think.
Yeah, that's the one thing I spotted. It needed a little, maybe some clarification on that one.
Yes, just sorry, Vic.
We say that we'll do a DBS for them in relation to working with children. Have we been DBS checked as counsellors?
No, I haven't.
We aren't working with children.
No.
But we
No,
should
but
need
I'm just wondering whether actually, I know we're not working with children per se, but if we're going to volunteer, I'm just wondering, we just need to check probably our counsellor handbook, check that they correspond and stay the same, because actually we do probably interact with children on our stalls and everything, not where we're on our own in relation
We
to,
should have enhanced one that covers vulnerable adults.
and we do deal with vulnerable adults in our role, so I'm just wondering, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but you just made me think, if we're gonna offer it to volunteers, we probably need to think similarly along our lines of our counsellors and staff. Same with our playing wardens going into play areas.
We did go through all of this, and there's certain criteria that you've got to have before you're allowed to have the enhanced one. So the time wardens, it was part of the specification about
Just sort of, yeah.
I think we need to look at that at some stage, because at the church I go to, just to be there and welcome people, you have to be tested, you have to be checked. Because you're talking to people who could be vulnerable.
I've had them at Somerset Council. I think I've had an enhanced one, but I'm just wondering whether probably as councillors, we probably need them. And I welcome it for volunteers, but we just need to make sure there's parity.
Yeah, I've got no call.
Right, is there anything else on that one? No? Can I have a proposer? Yes, February. Okay. Yes, Paul, thank you. Everybody agreed? Yes, okay. Right, number 10 is the asset register. Are there any questions on it?
Yes, I was very surprised to see that the shed wasn't an asset, because I didn't know that it was an asset of the town council, you know, so I was just very surprised to see that it's there. And so did we inherit that from Somerset Council? Yeah, it's a great location. And it's a very nice buffet, so. So I was very pleased to see it there. That was so.
And again? Oh, so yes, February.
My question was around the assets, and the fact that their original cost and their current value are the same. Is that the fact that we don't do a depreciation in relation to them? So even though we're not gonna get a hand bike at £5,729, it's unlikely to be costing £5,729 but if we were to sell it, is it just we just always will keep original and current value the same?
Yeah, town councils don't have to depreciate assets. It's the only place change, but that is the way it is. So that's why you've got a range of costs, either what we've been told it's been in the asset register from the parish, previous parish, or what Somerset have told us that it's worth, or the nominal pound for it to be something on the asset register.
Is the point of that, is it supposed to be for insurance costs for replacement costs or for sale costs? Because that would be to me, that would be two different figures.
So I think
Resale or replacement.
in terms of your asset register, you'll have the purchase cost only. So in terms of your AGAR for the end of the year, it will just be the purchase cost. I think the one thing that is suggested is that there are reinstatement valuations for all of your buildings because we've only used the cost that Somerset have given us. So that's the one area that would change potentially insurance costs going forward because we haven't done that.
And so can I ask further questions just on that asset list? Where was the mayor's chain in the asset list? Because the chain of office for the mayoress is showing at 50,000,
Yes.
but I thought the mayor's chain was worth
Yes.
considerably
There was,
more.
what you have may not be up to date. There was an issue with that coming through, so it is there and I have updated it. And maybe not on what you're looking at.
And will we then lead on to having an asset disposal policy eventually?
Yes. I think it is in the financial regulations in terms of what,
Yeah.
what has to be done, but probably not.
There is a certain amount which we need to put on the asset register.
Yeah.
Yes, Paul, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll be correct. My question was again about things that are there and not there. So I go to Victoria Park straight away because it's in my patch and I can't see the pavilion there. But Memorial Hall and Commentary was there and the shed's there. It's just,
It can be added. It's been fun, as you can imagine.
yeah, okay.
If they're the new black bins in Victoria Park, they're £1,000 a piece. Just, do any of those new black bins, the multi-use, still about £1,000? So we have that.
It's sort of mentioned in there, sort of, it says Victoria Street in the Park Pavilion. I wasn't sure what that is. It looks like it's just a pound.
Oh, there, is that the 576,000? Only that's the
total for
park.
the park, yeah.
Only that's the value of the park, is it? Yeah. But the actual park is worth 576,000.
Whoever think about it, yeah, totally. Yeah.
No, the park.
Parky land, okay, interesting.
Do you know what I find really useful around this is to tell members of the public just how expensive play equipment is.
Yes, no, it's true.
I was shocked just how, like,
So the Victoria Park is missing the word pavilion. That 576 is. That's the pavilion.
That's a-
That's
the
the
pavillion's worth 576.
reinstatement value. So it's what we will give them to Sunset.
Maybe treasure underneath.
Oh, thank you.
Just got a quick one, sorry, just because I'm obviously going through the list and I see things like, obviously like bins and things. I'm just take Maidenbrook for instance. You've got the shoulders, you have a dog bin, but there's only one dog bin. So I'm assuming there's going to be dog bins and other bins in Maidenbrook Estate, which is the other side of the road, but they're not listed. So did things get missed over transfers and things, or?
So all I've gone by is what was on the asset register from the parishes that we took in, which has been transferred to here. So if they weren't on their asset register, so they may, we're actually not paying when.
So I was just to say, on one of those bins, I ordered one and it came back that that's still being paid for and owned by the developer. That's why it's not on the,
Excellent.
behind the primary school now.
No, that's on the new.
That's the new one, yeah, no, sorry, I meant so you've got the Northwall estate, you've got the Nerrells, which is Summerlees estate, and then you have the Maidenbrook estate, which is Waterloo. So there are things in, there are bins and things in Waterlees that aren't appearing at all. And I imagine there's a few more bins in the Nerrells, Summerlees estate, which aren't on this list as well.
They're not actually paying for any bin emptying. Apart from in the parks.
Yes, and services.
So there's nothing being paid.
Were they Somerset Council bins that empty rather than parish council bins that empty?
So usually, so in,
So the parish paid for the bin emptying.
they don't own the bin, but they pay for, I don't know how that works. I know in Burnham, if we asked for a bin to be put in, we would then pay for the bin to be put in and then pay.
Yeah.
So that would go on our asset register, but all that's on here is all that was on the asset register. So it may be there are some that missed.
You're saying that everything on that wall, like the notice boards.
Well, I see,
Notice boards, they own them, I know they did.
yeah, I see a notice board. It just says school notice board, but I'm not even too sure if that's relating to the shoulders or not, but there's other ones in Waterlees and stuff, so I don't know if it's worth maybe touching base with Chedden Parish Council and saying, been brought to our attention, we might not have everything.
Yeah.
The other thing that I can't see is the councillor iPad.
That's not really.
No, we decided not to for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh,
Is it because they're ours now forever?
Exactly. Come back, maybe.
So just a further question, if I may. I see play park signs, some of these times 4. Why would we have the play park signs transferred and not the parks themselves? Well, it just says play park signs, some of these. Got 4, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008.
Yeah.
So we're responsible for the signs, not for the park. That is again, that's that.
It's just all we have on the list.
All right, okay, all right.
There is a wider piece of work. So all of the assets that we've got a system called Parish Online, and we are looking to drop pins on every bin that we own, every tree that we own, every building.
It's like
that
an
we own.
interactive Google Maps, effectively.
Right.
You can drop a pin, take a picture, say how often it's all been maintained.
Yeah, upload it.
And that's quite a bit of work.
I hate to give people work, but should we have a map, all the parks we own, every area we own, so we know, because I know 2 or 3, which someone questioned me the other day and I said, is it belong to the town council or not? The answer I could give was no, I didn't, what it still, I think, belongs to Somerset Council.
Everything that we own is on the website, so all of the parks and open space.
Yeah, I've gone through, there's 1 or 2 there I've noticed which are not on there.
It's not on there.
It's not on there, it's Somerset
Yeah,
Council.
yeah, it's not owned by us, yeah.
But I thought that they handed over all play parks.
No,
No,
no.
Then it's mine.
No, there's a very specific list.
There's a couple in my ward, one of which is on Killams, for example. There's an older one which there's been huge conversations about who actually owns it. Well, there's 3 actually. There's a really, really old one which has fallen into disrepair, a relatively old one which is still used, which I think is still Somerset Council, but it's not ours. And there's a brand new one that is maintained by the developer, by the developers. But it confuses the residents no end because they're not quite sure who to tackle.
I'm wondering if, will we eventually need a GIS system or something to monitor our assets if it is that we end up taking on GIS? Am I right with that? Yeah. To do where our assets are, or do we have that already because we've got?
That's Parish Online.
That's Parish Online. Oh, okay, brilliant. Okay.
I just wanted to say that the asset register doesn't include any of the land or buildings that you've got that are in trust, because they're not owned by the council, but they are owned by the trustees. So there are some things missing, but that's why, because they're not on your radar.
Very confusing.
I know, tell me.
Do what Westmontans own, one owned a lot, and that way we know exactly what they are. Right,
Oh, where was the toilet?
That's not what I mean. And we do.
That's very.
Don't tell us out the door.
So we don't, nothing's at least is on there either because you don't own it.
Oh, they said that.
Castle Green
a long-term
lease,
lease.
Cannon Green lease.
Oh, because they're on the long, okay,
Yeah.
so on long term.
Yeah, so we don't own them. They're not an asset.
Okay. So when we do the work on them that we plan, will they toilet cubicles become ours? No, because they will still be part of the bit, okay, won't, double checking, but we'll have the moral high ground is all.
And we're negotiating a good deal in terms of grant funding.
Yes, the service level agreement, it will say that if we invest in these toilets and you used to take them back from us for any particular reason, you've got to refund
A certain percentage of money that you spend.
Yeah.
No, that's.
I've just got a question out there. If we're paying to refurbish them, see they don't want them anymore, why don't we just keep them to us?
Some of it is because they're part of a bigger asset, so the ones in Bridewood Park, obviously part of the cafe, they won't transfer the cafe to us. The ones in Cannon Street car park are part of the car park, and so therefore they won't be able to transfer the freehold of the toilets to us. Castle Green is part of, yeah.
O&B. The whole title of the whole building.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
This is the Hamilton Park toilet, because it's part of a Fielding Trust. So it's part of the pavilion that sits in the Fielding Trust, so it's, yeah, okay. So get my head round where they said it.
Before anybody else asks us the same kind of questions, can we not have a list of what we lease, what's under the trust? So that we know in the end what exactly we do own, what we actually lease, because I thought we owned the toilets. I thought
No,
they handed them over to us.
It actually is part of that, a spreadsheet that I've got, so it's fine.
Right. Any more questions on that one?
I'm glad you're paying attention, it's very well.
Right. Can I have a proposer that we approve that policy? Is possible, yes. No, it's just that we approve the assets, sorry. Yeah.
Sit for
Okay.
the meeting.
So can I have a seconder, please? Thank you very much, Amber. Everybody agreed? Thank you. Right, where are we? Incoming expenditure. I'm gonna leave it. Sorry, if I missed one out. What internal audit? Sorry, I do apologize. I want you to go over it because I wouldn't understand it.
Oh, yes, you will. So the first report with all the greens on the right is because those are all enacted or in action, so yeah, that's all lovely. And then the second report from February, I just wanted to talk it through because we had some trouble understanding it, so it might be easier just to talk it through. So the first item is very simple. So some chairs have just been signing the minutes at the end, and actually each individual page needs to be initialed. That needs to happen going forward, so we'll make sure that happens going forward. The second is actually when we were created, we weren't expecting to have any cash, and our financial regulations, we don't really want any cash, but we do get some because of the donations that we receive through some of the events that we have. So we don't have a cash policy, but we need one, and it can be very simple in terms of when the cash comes in, it's double counted, 2 people sign the piece of paper, and then it goes to the bank, and we've got safes and what have you. So that will be put in place. It's not a major issue, and we don't have it very often, hence we're not having it. Next, so the contracts of employment. So I'm going to make this really as simple as I can. So I carry out payroll currently, but I don't have access to the contracts of employment. The question was asked by the auditor, how do I know that I'm paying people the correct amount of money, because I don't have access to those contracts of employment. Donna has access to those. What he's suggesting is that Donna has a master spreadsheet with everybody's on it, so that when I send payroll to her to be authorised, she can check payroll versus contract of employment amount, and that's the double check that gets done to make sure people get paid. So that is 1, 2, and 3 on the middle page, basically in a succinct way. And when it says the council, it's talking about how the council does it as a process, not as an individual. We've got a struggle because I get.
Yeah.
We got there in the end. As number 4, with regards to toil, so it sounds like when you read it that we don't have a practice in place to review toil. So there is a policy in with regards to toil. We have an online HR system where people log their toil, and every manager every month talks to each individual about how much toil they've got and how it's part of the one-to-one. I guess the next overview is for that to come to probably personnel as an overview, so that you've got a view of that. And then lastly is the trust income. So to do a proper reconciliation of the money that we've received in when the charities and trusts closed, which I've done, and that's complete. Oh, sorry, no, it's not. It's to do with the fact that I put the money in as income and not as a creditor's account, but I've moved that and I put it green, so it's now not sitting in your income, it's sat in creditor's account.
Ray, my question was just on the toil and time off on leave point, is I guess it just made me think, have we got the checks that means people are getting 11-hour break between working regs, isn't it? Is it the European? I know we're not in the EU anymore, but you're meant to have an 11-hour break between shifts or start times. And I know that where we run evening meetings, are we just making sure that that all falls into place? Because toil just made me think about that, because you're probably building up toil to do evening meetings unless you're coming in later. How does that then affect what you're working the next day?
I'll have a look at that.
Cool.
We're still working under the European Directorate. They didn't get rid of it.
No, because you've got the 48-hour working week still, don't you? And I think you've got to sign up.
The October directive.
Yeah.
Working time directive.
Yeah.
Is there any questions on this?
Just to come back in again, I think it's actually really positive. This is our first year again, and then you sit and go, okay, so the auditors have picked up. I'm not saying that, they're all high priority, aren't they, really? But do you know what? We've done really well just to come out with so few, and that's a testament to all of our officer team in relation to just being well run in relation to that.
It's always one of those nervous points, isn't it, when the auditors come in, you think, okay, what are we doing the right way? So yeah, so it's positive when you do get a lot back from them.
I think the fact that, it's down to points like not initially individual pages of minutes, which is, it's a procedural thing as opposed to being business critical. So I mean, most of these they're very minor things that are very easily fixable, which is great.
Is there any more questions on this one?
I was just interested to see about the grants, that the grants, the grants that have been decided by the grants committee then have to go through another committee. Is that right? Have I not understood that?
Not anymore.
No, so the committee set up in their own right. What happens is the minutes of those committees go to full council to be noted, to say that they are aware of what's happened within the committee meetings.
That particular one, it was a couple of full sessions ago that we agreed to make the grants committee a full committee, because it just wasn't practical, because we needed to be able to award the money straight away, to then wait possibly another 2 or 3 months for this committee to happen. Made it, a sort of very clunky procedure.
And the auditor's point on that is that full council should be aware of what all of the committees are doing.
Yes.
But, which is why we put the signed minutes on full council, so that you all have an opportunity to know what all of the committees are doing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions on that? Can I have a proposal to approve it? Mr. Seppi, a second, please. Thanks, Paul. Do we all agree? Yes, thank you. Right, list of payments.
Just for you to note, happy to ask any questions.
Was desperately looking through this to find anything that really jumped out at me as being awful, but it all looked
Like fairly straightforward payments, but feel free to. No, and I'm pretty much the same because I think, you know, today council tax bills have landed and people are going, what do they pay their council tax for and what do they get? Do you know what? We are so open and transparent in the fact that everyone online, and if you're watching, you can go and look at this document at page 257 and see exactly the level of detail that gets broken down to. Now, people may want to question like what some of these are as an example, but actually you can truly see that we're boiling down to a £2.10 bank charge as an example, and an alarm call out, and so really, you know, all the way down to, you know, what it costs to put on remembrance as an example. So that it, you know, and what I do like, because I'm new to this from a parish point of view, is that the transaction details are pretty clear, I guess. My only question was around eventually, let's say we got Pennyfield's grass cutting, that's currently outsourced. Will we eventually insource that as an example? So there were just those more strategic questions, but actually signing this off, fine.
Is there any questions about that? And I have a proposal that we accept them, please. Frederica and Paul, everybody agreed? Thank you. Right, that's all we are now. No, income and expenditure. Up to this afternoon and I still can't understand all the red that's on it. Red always frightens
Red's
me.
good.
Yeah.
Notice good, black is bad.
Yeah, red is income.
Do you want me to say?
Yeah, could you that's very nasty.
So, I think this will change slightly because we've really upped the pace in terms of delivering some things in the parks in the last month or so. So on the reserves page, what I'm suggesting, that there will be some underspends, but there'll be underspends in areas where you've got plans to do things. So I'm suggesting that you create earmark reserves to ring fence those funds to continue to be used in those areas. So the slight underspend in allotments, but I also do know that might change because I just put some fence in one of the allotments and I haven't taken that into account. And with regards to parks and maintenance and repair, so this is a positive update. So it was only in December that with quite a lot of me getting grumpy with Somerset, that when I looked at their budget that we were supposed to be paying them in terms of the service, there was one particular line in each of their parks which was to do with maintenance and repair, and we were supposed to be paying it to them, but I questioned a lot that I think we should have held that budget so that our rangers could, or wardens could, make those improvements. So we were supposed to be paying that money to Somerset, but we're not because it's being kept here, and all of the maintenance that's happened is been spent out of that. So it wasn't expected because you didn't know it was in that detail. But so I think that should be ring fenced for parks going forward. You've got some big ambitions in terms of that. And then the service improvement plan, you clearly agreed the numerous range of items and some of those coming through, and they're in progress. So those funds should be ring fenced, and toilets for the same reason.
I think my question is around the small improvements for the parks and open spaces. I think not sure where it sits. So like I've asked as an example for a bench to be replaced in a certain park in Blackbrook and been told, oh, there isn't the money or we've got to wait. And I thought I'd heard other councils say similar. So it's just around, actually, if we have got the money, we need to ensure that next year, you know, we had considerably put up the council tax. It would be good to see next year as we work through it and we have a kind of idea of what our first year running costs is, our expectations in this budget, that we kind of manage those underspends, because if we're saying we're going to do, then we need to do. And like to be said, oh yeah, I'm not sure I've got the budget for a bench, is a kind of like, well, okay, well,
I didn't think so. We didn't think we did until December.
Yeah.
So we certainly do now. And I would say with regards to the toilets and the play areas, because you've got Paul we have saved so much
A lot of money.
by using pool.
Yeah.
And not using some of that to fix those things.
Yeah.
Can I just sort of make a request if at all possible, because it is just a lot of numbers and it's a lot. I try and sometimes struggle to make out what's what. Just to have sort of like a top sheet that says where we currently are, like.
You do.
Yeah.
I can talk you through it.
Okay.
So, the very first sheet, but the summary,
Yeah,
at the very bottom, effectively, I'm saying that you're just going to underspend by £384. Underspend by £384. So
there's this year-end projection is the
year
one
end
that we need to look
projection, you'll
at.
be basically, we're going to put in reserves any underspend, so we'll only believe, you won't be overspent, you won't be underspent, I think you should put as much as you can in terms of reserves and basically balance what you've spent.
Is the reserves essentially our current underspend, but because we have no reserves, we need to start building those up?
So you have a general reserve, but you don't have any other reserves. Yeah.
So you're creating an earmarked reserve movement by putting in the 350k, which is the underspend from this year because of the reasons that you and Donna have just given.
Yeah.
And we then build up a 350k earmarked reserves, which is then outlined.
Allocated to different pots, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that is what rolls forward.
I'm not sure it's 250, but
I know.
4,000, so on the second page on the reserve,
Yeah.
you've got 4,750 for allotments, 60,000 for parks, 220 for the service improvement plan, and 15,000 for,
Oh yeah.
it's that. The 350 is the general reserve that was created at the very beginning.
Probably asked the staff this question all the night, but still. What is the recommended reserves for a council of our size?
It's a net 3-month net revenue expenditure, which is £350,000 near on down it.
Yeah.
And we budgeted for next year to increase that on what we perceive that will look like.
Between 3 to 6 months, isn't it, they say?
But there is a upper limit, isn't there? Because unfortunately, on the council, which didn't spend enough and looked and local.
There's not actually nothing documented. They say it's good practice to have something. There's no fixed term or amount. What the auditors will do if they was to look at your accounts and see that you've got so much sat there just in your general reserves, they would tell you that you should allocate it to a project or to an earmarked, which is what we're doing. So we're putting it into specific spending.
It's more difficult to spend it or more tricky to spend it in general reserve. So to put it in those earmarked pots means we can use it for the things that you've already agreed for it to be useful.
All right. Any more questions? No? Brilliant. Can I have a proposal, please? Thank you, Vanessa. Can we have a second, please? Thank you, Frederica. Everybody agreed? Right, okay. Item 14. During the discussion of the following items, agenda item 11, it may be necessary to pass the following resolution to exclude the press and public, having reflected on the presumed to in favour of the openness. This decision may be required, because the class is straight. Consideration of this matter in the public may be discussed informally, falling within one of the descriptions of the exemption information of schedules 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. The committee will need to decide whether it is in the circumstances of the case the public's interest is maintained to the extent or outlined the public's interest is disclosed the information. Basically, we're going to decide whether we're going, sorry.
I should say item 15.
11, yeah.
But this is on item 15, which is the insurance policy. Can I have a proposal that we close the meeting, or
Can I just ask you a question? This is to go into the whole item
it's for the whole
rather
item?
than, okay, so we can't keep as much in the public domain as we can do, bearing in mind that a lot of it is on the website, including the cost of the two options.
I think because we'll be talking about commercial businesses, I think we.
Covering report's not confidential.
But no, but so if it's only if we've got any questions on the detailed element that we need to go into, so I'd rather, because the actual amount, option 1 and 2 are shown in the public report.
It's just whether you're going to talk about a particular company.
Yeah, so if we want, but if we called them option 1 or 2, I don't mind, but I just like to keep things transparent
Yeah.
where possible. You need us to vote anyway, don't you?
Yeah, you'll need
Yeah.
to vote.
You could maybe choose to do it partway through if you felt that you were
I
interested.
sort of starts to answer and so, but it can be dodgy to do that, unfortunately.
Suppose that we don't.
Which we have to vote one way or we have to vote one way or the other.
One way or the other.
I always recommend voting it through, so you've got it in your back pocket.
Yeah,
And then
which is,
you can deploy it or not as necessary.
Can I propose that we, yes, Rodrigo,
I'm happy to propose that we take the decision now, that if we need to,
we can go.
we can go into it, but where possible, we keep in much.
Happy to second
Okay.
that.
Sorry, Vanessa, I'll get it right in a minute. Thank you, Amber, will. Right. Can I vote the phone, please? Yes, okay, fine. Will you,
Can I just say a couple of bits?
yes,
Been a bit of a moving feast, this, so some of the figures are not quite correct on option 2, because there are, the shed is actually now in a floodplain area, which has changed since the last time we were insured, because everyone's been finding it very difficult to insure the shed. So actually option 2 is not 16029, it's 16662.18. I also just would like to suggest that option 2 is our current provider, and they've been brilliant, and they've gone through the journey with us for the last year. I've had at least 4 meetings face to face and many others when things have changed. And I would recommend that you stay with them, because that understanding in terms of what you're doing is really high, and you'd have to start that again with a new insurer.
right, that's Rodrigo.
So with that additional cost, you're saying it's approximately now £1,300 more than than option 1. I'm really comfortable with staying with our current provider based on that journey. I know Martin Lewis tells us all to shop around when it comes to our insurance. I know how it is different. But I think we've gone out and got another option. But however, we do know that that relationship is worth a lot based on where our journey is today. And therefore, in my world, holding these conversations with them, they know our situation, and therefore if we ever needed to claim, they would have been told about that beforehand very clearly, and their quote will be based on that information. So when it looks to be making a claim, you would think that would make it easier, but let's hope we don't need to.
I would also just say that the level of service that we've received from them, clearly, I'm sure it's really good. When we've needed that, and we've just asked about silver, because that's not insured yet for us. And we've already come back with options in terms of how we need to make sure it's stored, etc.
And I would just suggest happy to take a recommendation. Often going cheap is not the best solution. It's about service at the end of the day. And as it's already been mentioned, if they know our situation, the working relationship's already built, why break that? It's actually probably more effective to, even if it is £1,300 more expensive, to protect yourself against something that in the future may or may not happen. So.
So, yeah, curiosity.
You also need to decide the infidelity, sorry, not infidelity, the fidelity. That's not happening that. The fidelity insurance. So at the moment, you're only insured up to £250,000. In the bank, you have a lot more cash. The auditor can't recommend, but has suggested that you should review it. In terms of access, all of our bank accounts are 2 to sign. So no one person could affect that. The only one that's one to sign is the CCLA, and the only way that money can be transferred is into our NatWest current account, so there's no risk in terms of anything else. So you do need to review that, and actually for option 2, I do have a million, up to £1 million and up to £2 million, but given that you're now precepting to 6, you should make sure you have something.
So that's it. It seems foolish not to, given the amount that we're actually increasing our budget to next year, but also what is the actual risk? Is it purely on money? It's loss of money held. It's not on assets. It's not on anything else, but it's purely the
It's
financial loss.
internal fraud, effectively.
Yeah. Or if the bank disintegrated,
Yes.
because obviously that's considerably above the amount that would be covered by national legislation.
Yeah. Well, we don't come under any the scheme, unfortunately.
Oh, right, so just put that.
So you don't have the compensation schemes, not, they're not.
And
Don't come under that.
Sally, can you explain to me how we receive our precepting money? Will we receive the 6 million all in one go?
In April.
So what is it to insure up to 6 million?
I don't have that cost because it could be a lot more, but I can, that's what you suggest, that's what we go back to.
There is a danger. There was another council which unfortunately decided to put money in an Icelandic bank. Fair shake on us.
I'd like to see what the quote is to go up to 6 million, just because it sounds strange. It's only 3,000 to go up from 250 right up to 2 million.
Mm-hmm.
So you would think that you probably maybe be at the £5,000 mark, sorry, or something like that, if you were to equate it in a percentage terms.
Yeah, so the £1 million is 2.6,
Yeah.
so 2.6 thousand, and that's 3.6 for £2 million. So I'm guessing around
About
5 or 6 thousand.
I'd like to just see what that is for the sake of £3,000 to protect 6 million. I know the risk is still low that we would lose 6 million.
Otherwise, there's no point having insurance at all if you're not covered. Then
So
you're not covered.
you could suggest that up to a certain amount, you're going to give us delegated authority to be able to that.
Yeah.
Is this coming to full council tomorrow?
Yes.
I think I would recommend that we insure up to the 6 million, up to a value of £6,000. We give you authority to do.
I would say
Unless anyone's got any concerns
that
or
proposal.
reasons why we wouldn't do it.
I think the point of insurance is you're supposed to be able to cover your assets, and if the insurance doesn't cover the assets that we would have for a significant portion of
We've
the
got
year.
6 million plus reserves.
Yeah.
Because we've got our general reserves, our earmark reserves, plus our income coming in.
Would be fit for purpose.
And if we're not protected like any other scheme, because we sit outside of the normal, household bank protection, however, other authorities.
I can attempt to get a quote for tomorrow. night.
They might do, yeah.
If not, I think you're probably looking at, I think it might be more like 10 to 12,000 pounds. That's so 2,000, so it's 4,000 pounds roughly, or £2 million.
Okay, yeah.
So if you go on that proportionality,
It's just, yeah.
But even on that, it's better to lose 10,000.
but it's about the risk of that happening.
That's
So
happening. It's like
one transaction of £6 million.
You wouldn't be able to do a transaction of £6 million
No.
because we haven't got the capacity to do that. So the risk is
Okay.
very,
So it's in the financial regulations and internal controls, in most that we can agree internally is £350,000, one payment of up to £350,000, but we would need to be colluding to enable those transactions.
It has happened in the past.
I used to work in a bank.
Yeah. New York City Council lost a heck of a lot of money. So,
but that's where the internal controls come into effect, isn't it, of having the sign-offs from an approval system.
And you both have to electronically sign on to then do the transfer, so it would be a double collusion. Okay.
And is £6 million enough?
I think.
Somebody might.
we have a proposal from Frederica.
Do we need to then? If you're saying that the risk, if
It would, can we,
What is the actual risk?
Is there any other
next
reason?
season?
It can happen. It can happen. It's no thinking it can't.
So
Especially
what would
that's
say
what they can-
potentially with, if something did happen and you lost £6 million, you would be insured for 2 million of
And
those.
then we
So
lose 4 million.
is where you want that risk to sit, I guess.
So the only way we could lose money if it was stolen or the bank went.
what if we were hacked?
Yeah.
Need to be decided where that opening,
What
so
is
was
the
that
liability?
staff
Yeah,
that enabled that or not?
But also the transaction is still fixed at 350
Yeah.
grand, and that's one
there's a cap.
transaction
Yes,
in X period of time.
correct. Yeah.
So logically, we would have, if that, say that did happen, that would then be picked up. And then any measures from the bank would already kick in, so that kind of negates that ever happening and losing everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing is the bank going belly up,
Yeah.
which
Yes, it can.
it can, but
And we have got a policy to split our money across multiple
yeah.
banks,
thanks.
haven't
We
we?
put it with the CCLA mainly, which is.
And do we need to relook at that because we're going up to £6 million that we need to have greater spread of our,
We did look at that, before the splitting it up,
What's the Flagstone?
Flagstone, having the Flagstone account.
Yeah, we did look at that, but it's like, more it wasn't, yeah. We didn't know enough about them to,
Also, we didn't know what we needed, but yeah.
maybe better to go with the amount that we've got, the 2 million as a reasonable amount to protect and look at spreading the finances, which would then protect against any one particular bank being a liability if it was spread over different pots. As a
Just
better,
2 million is a sensible thing to do because it's only our second financial year.
yeah.
And that should seem adequate.
Alongside moving it around.
Yeah.
You're right, that was also what would you advise?
I don't think we need to insure it all because I don't think,
Okay.
I don't think that there's that much risk. I think it makes sense to have it because it's an awful lot of money, especially if there's something outside of our control that
Yeah.
happens. That's what I think. But it's up to you.
no, that
Just-
makes a lot more sense.
If that's the only way.
Talked it through. Thank you.
Just as a warning, that what was it, 15 banks, 15 councils lost their money with the Icelandic banks. They were guaranteed by the Danish government it would be safe. They still went. So. But what do you all want to do? It's your decisions.
I'm happy with Giuseppe's recommendation that we keep it the 2 million at the moment. And it would be worthwhile, and it might be that it is in the confidential documents to see the terms and conditions of the insurance policy to understand what is it that they protect us from in relation to that
Okay,
clause.
right.
Just because we haven't thought of anything that is.
Who are you going to process? Yes.
I don't even think it's a proposal, is it?
Well, no, because that's.
Because it's on the document saying
Well,
you
it's
can
two different
choose.
things.
But you need to propose
Are
to
the-
the full council tomorrow as a recommendation, so ideally I'd like you to suggest
Option 2.
Yes, yeah, well, I'm going to propose option.
Two, yes, and can I have a second to option 2? Yeah, okay, that's okay. Are you all agreed on that?
Yep.
That's it. Right. Whatever time it is now, 8:45, we will finish. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.